Hey now, Brawlers, it's time for another Board Game Brawl review with Nick Minahan, sponsored by BoardGameBliss.com. Hey folks, today we're going to take a look at the long-awaited first expansion pack for Magic the Gathering Arena of the Planeswalkers, called the Battle for Zendikar expansion pack. Now this ties directly into the storyline of the main Magic the Gathering card game, the latest set being called Battle for Zendikar. If you're not familiar with it, basically there's this world called Zendikar where there were these ancient beings called the Eldrazi. They're like Magic's equivalent of the Great Old Ones from Cthulhu mythos, who are incredibly powerful and beyond the reasoning of mortal beings. A long time ago, in a galaxy far away, in the world of Magic the Gathering, a bunch of planeswalkers, really powerful ones, got together and sealed up the Eldrazi in the world of Zendikar, lest they lay waste to everything everywhere for all time. And unfortunately, in the present day of Magic, they have been released and are laying waste to Zendikar with their eyes on the rest of the multiverse, and you and the other players are trying to, Your planeswalkers who really don't care about any of that. You just want to make use of all these new Eldrazi units. But of course, within the storyline, the planeswalkers want to put an end to the Eldrazi. Now, in this new expansion pack for Arena, and specifically, you have a couple of new planeswalkers who have direct tie-ins to the Zendikar and to the Eldrazi. You have Kiora, the merfolk planeswalker who's from Zendikar, who is trying to use her Kraken army to destroy the Eldrazi. And then you have Obnixilis, I'm not sure if I'm ever pronouncing his name correctly, who is like this demon planeswalker who wants the Eldrazi to destroy everything because he hates Zendikar. In terms of gameplay elements, you have both of those characters as brand new planeswalkers to use in the Arena of the Planeswalkers, along with a bunch of new units, which I'll talk more about when we get to my final thoughts. Let's go ahead and give a brief look at everything that comes in a new expansion pack without explaining the entire game. If you want, you can watch my original review of Arena of the Planeswalkers to get an idea of how to play the game. Then we're going to come back. I'll let you know what I think. Alright, this is everything that comes in the new Battle for Zendikar expansion for Magic the Gathering Arena of the Planeswalkers. They need to do something about that name. It's a little bit too clunky, but I digress. So let's go ahead and start off with the two things that people are probably most interested in, and those are the new planeswalkers that are in this set. You have Obnixilis, Demon of Spite, and Kiora, the Rising Tide, who is a personal favorite of mine. Now, Kiora is noteworthy for a few reasons, but primarily she is a two-color planeswalker. That means that she can use cards from either of the two colors, in this case, blue and green. And then her special abilities, just to go through well, let's show you the miniature first. I feel like that's worth noting. I do have them set up there for a reason. So there is her miniature. And then what her special abilities are. First off, she has the sea, notice her stats here. She has the Seaborn ability. She can move through water spaces without stopping her movement, and she gets +2 defense in that case. She also has Carry by Waves. At the start of her turn, she can move a creature she controls up to 4 spaces. And then she has the Bident of Thassa. I'd never heard of the word Bident before this. It almost sounds like it's the Vice President of the United States. Once per game, when Kiora ends her turn in a water space, you can reveal the top 2 cards of your library, put a sorcery from those in your hand, and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. So very cool, like little versatility as you would expect from a blue mage. Now, Obnixilis here is probably one of the most impressive of the figures in the game for one of the medium-sized figures. And his abilities, well, first off, he has flying, which can be very, very useful. Basically, he can, when counting his movement spaces, he ignores all different types of elevation and can move over water, of course, passing over figures without becoming engaged, and over obstacles such as ruins. When he starts off flying, however, as with any flying unit, that can provoke what I call attacks of opportunity because of my old D&D days. His only other special ability is a pretty nasty one, At Any Price, which says that he gets to destroy a squad creature adjacent to him. Its controller draws a card, in that case, as compensation. You use this ability once per turn. So it's a free kill, although your opponent gets to draw a card, and it doesn't mean that Ob needs to be in combat for this to happen. And okay, sure, let's go to the showstopper next before people get bored. You have Eldrazi. There are two different types of Eldrazi. You have these smaller squad-based units, the Eldrazi Scions, and you have, of course, the big daddy, the Ruiner. Now, all 4 total of these units are amongst the 5, I think, total units, including the core Sky Captain, or the core Aeronaut Captain here, who have to be partially assembled when you get the game. It's not a very big deal. You have to put on one arm of the Ruiner, and then these have to sort of clunkily attach to their bases, but once you got it, you got it. And the Eldrazi are another type of unit that you can use in combat. They are a lot of points, or at least the Ruiner is. Let's get a little closer look at the impressiveness of this sculpt. Definitely the most impressive of the sculpts we've seen so far, at least the biggest anyways. So here we'll go ahead and talk about the Ruiner first. He has Lash of Tentacles, which says that at the start of the Eldrazi Ruiner's turn, you deal damage to all adjacent non-Eldrazi creatures. You have Otherworldly. While being attacked by a non-adjacent creature, he gets +2 defense. And the Shepherd of Scions. You deal damage to an Eldrazi Ruiner and place an Eldrazi Scion creature from your figure graveyard on an adjacent empty space. So he can basically resummon killed Scions. But speaking of those Scions, basically, while they are units and they have attack and defense and can be used as such, they're basically food for the Ruiner. It'll mention here, because there are potentially more Eldrazi to come in the future, that they can become the food of any hero Eldrazi, like the Ruiner. Devour for speed at the start of your the turn of an Eldrazi hero you control. You may destroy an Eldrazi Scion creature you control. If you do, that Eldrazi hero gets +4 move until end of turn. Devour for strength, however, says that they get +2 combat for essentially the same thing. But before we go any further, let's talk about a whole other way that you can use that Eldrazi Ruiner. And that's a whole other 1 versus all game mode. In this game mode that's for either 3 or 4 players, one player is fighting against the other 2 or 3 players controlling their Planeswalkers. That player takes control of the Eldrazi Ruiner and the Eldrazi Scions. Many of the abilities are exactly the same as they were for the basic, quote-unquote, Eldrazi Ruiner, but he also has newer, nasty abilities. So, for instance, it essentially gets to treat itself like a Planeswalker for the purposes of summoning the Eldrazi Scions. He can, if there are any in his reserve, he can summon them out there the same way that any other Planeswalker would summon a squad of creatures. He can also then control them with his Scion Rush ability after his main turn is over. He also has Relentless, which is that whenever he destroys a figure in combat, he gets to attack again. And then he has Lay Waste, which is an ability I think is really neat, which is basically if there's no Planeswalker adjacent to him, he just attacks everything within 6 spaces of him. Or to be more specific, he's not attacking, he's dealing damage to every creature within 6 spaces of him. Now, of course, because it is 1 versus all, despite all those nasty abilities, he also gets a hit point boost depending on the number of players, either 20 or 36 points, depending on whether he has 2 or 3 opponents. Here's the life track that you use to keep track of that. And then also there's a round limit. If the Ruiner can make it without being killed to round 28 or 30, again, depending on the number of players, he's going to win. But alright, enough of that particular fun stuff. Let's move on to other fun stuff. You have a lot of new units in the game that your Planeswalkers can take control of. You have some hero units like the core Aeronaut Captain, who also has flying, just like Ob Nixilis. Let's go ahead and take a closer look at their miniatures as well. This one requires slight assembly as well. You have to squeeze the wings on when you take it out of the box. And the core Aeronaut Captain also has a couple of other really cool abilities, most notably his air raid ability, which lets him pick up another squad creature and drop it off wherever he lands, which I just think is very fun and thematic. You have the Merfolk Royal Mage. I keep getting that name wrong. I apologize for that. But the Merfolk Royal Mage, just like with Kiora herself, can move through water spaces and gets +2 defense while in the water. And then Part Water's ability, friendly figures may move through empty water spaces adjacent to the Merfolk Royal Mage without stopping movement. So your other creatures can really make use of her abilities. Then you have new squad figures. You have 3 different types of squad figures. You have goblins, specifically the Goblin Javelineers, the Elven Path Wardens, and you have the Vampire Malakir Blood Chasers, all with their own different special abilities. The Javelineers are actually sort of random chance. When you choose to use their volatile Hedron Javelin, you have to roll the d20, and then you'll get a random result, which could actually be hurting them if you're really unlucky, or you just get to deal the damage, or potentially up to 2 damage once per turn. The Path Wards are very interesting because if there's any small or medium creatures adjacent to them, then they cannot be the target of ranged attacks. The attacks have to be from adjacent figures. And the Malakir Blood Chasers, who, of course, as vampires are wont to do, boy, those are really not showing up well on the black background. Sorry about that, but they're not that impressive as figures. The Malakir Blood Chasers are, of course, all about damage and blood. If they damage someone, they get to remove damage from themselves. And also, if the enemy they're attacking does have damage markers on it already with their Scent of Blood ability, they get +1 hit for that defending creature. There, of course, are also new sorcery and enchantment spells in this expansion. There's actually 3 for every color in the game. I'm just going to show you one of each that I thought was particularly interesting, but they are all new and add new stuff to the game. For blue, you have Royal Mage's Trick. Target creature you control gets +X combat until the end of turn, where X is the number of cards in target opponent's hand. X can't be greater than 4. Stasis Snare for white is an enchantment. You enchant a squad. Whenever a creature in Enchanted Squad destroys a creature while attacking, the creatures in Enchanted Squad can't attack again this turn. Green Sorcery, Elvish Blade Finesse. Deal 2 damage to target figure adjacent to at least 2 elves that you control. Red, Stubborn Resilience. I like this one a lot, actually. I don't even like red. Enchant Squad. Stubborn Resilience can be played only on a squad with 1 creature remaining. Enchanted Squad gets +2 combat, +2 defense, and +2 move. I just think that's pretty cool, like the lone survivor. Painful Truths, a black sorcery. You may deal 2 damage to a figure you control. If you do, draw 2 cards. And hey, flavor text, that's on a lot of the cards. So, and like I said, there's a bunch more cards, 2 more for every color. So that's it. That's everything that is in the expansion pack, the Battle for Zendikar expansion for Arena of the Planeswalkers, Magic the Gathering, blah, 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 longest name ever. Now, let's get to my final thoughts. Now, I like this expansion pack quite a bit, and we're going to talk about the things that are in the box that I like, but I feel it would be disingenuous if I didn't start off talking about what's not in the box that really, I think, hurts the expansion as a whole. First and foremost, no terrain. No terrain. That is bizarre and a very, very poor choice in my opinion, because as far as I know, and I may be wrong on this, I'm not keen on like every single industry going on, I don't believe they announced any other expansion for Arena of the Planeswalkers. Everyone's been waiting for this one, which means there's no other expansion terrain expansion on the horizon, which means you have whatever terrain was in the base game and whatever you may happen to have from Heroescape that you're retrofitting into this game. And I just find that very weird and bizarre, especially since we're looking at the same bland environments as we were with the original base game of Arena. I mean, I have old Heroescape terrain and I've used some of it, but you shouldn't be expected to delve into an old game to get good enough stuff to make your game look good and to give you more variety of terrain types. That's just a weird thing. And I don't know why they didn't include more in this that would be related to Zendikar or to the 2 Planeswalkers in particular. More water tiles for Kiora and the Royal Merfolk Royal Mage. More, I don't know what Ob Nixilis would need as far as flavored terrain, but something to give it, like those Hedrons or Hedrons from Zendikar. That would have been a cool thing. Nothing. I don't really understand it. I mean, even games like Zombicide sell separate tile packs, and that's not even the main focal point of that game. The terrain is a huge part of what makes, Arena of the Planeswalkers as a miniature skirmish game so cool. So I really wish they'd had actual terrain even a little bit in this box, and they don't. The other thing that is more nitpicky, but I think is worth noting, is that, okay, you've got these 2 Planeswalkers. I'll talk about them in a minute in more detail. That are really cool. I like them, and they have very specific flavors to them. Kiora in the Magic the Gathering mythos is all about summoning big creatures. She's a green-blue mage, so she uses, blue magic, but she also summons large creatures. In this case, krakens in particular, like large underwater creatures. Nothing like that in this box. You have the Royal Folk, Merfolk mages, and then you've got some elven units because she's part green colored. Okay, fine. And then for Ob Nixilis, you have some goblins. I don't really know what his flavor is supposed to be again, but I would think demons, something. So it's kind of weird that they just had this hodgepodge of different units rather than focusing on fleshing out these two units and the colors that they bring to the table. It's almost like they wanted to have a grab bag of different units just to flesh out everyone's armies from the base game, which I can appreciate, but again, I wish this expansion had been more tightly focused. Okay, that's the end of my griping. It probably sounds like I'm getting really hard on this game. That came out wrong. Like I'm being very harsh to this game. But the truth is, I like this expansion quite a lot. I thought that there was a lot of really neat stuff in here. The Planeswalkers in particular are very interesting. I have a soft spot for Kiora. She's one of my favorite Planeswalkers from the Magic the Gathering universe. And even though I do wish that she had more cool units and Kraken units, she herself is very cool in this game. I love her extra movement ability for one of her units, that she gets stronger in water together with that merfolk that's in the game, who also is stronger in water, and better in water at least. And then her trident that lets her sort of fish for sorcery cards. I thought that was really cool. So she's not as strong, like life point wise, or even attack wise, as some of the other Planeswalkers, but I think that she's very versatile and useful, and I'm glad that she's represented well. And her miniature looks cool too. I like all the miniatures that come in this expansion set, and even the original. I know that some miniatures aficionados don't care for them very much, but I think they do well enough for the price point of the game, and the expansion is not too expensive. Ob Nixilis is also very cool. His special ability is just ridiculous, where he just can crush an enemy. I just find that very cool, but of course it does mean that he needs to get into the thick of things. But the fact that he's a flying unit, and there's a couple of other flying units in this expansion too, that's a really cool thing. The core, I think that's what they're called, like the core Sky Dancer or whatever it is, the white unit that has the wings. I really love that one. Again, flying, but also the ability to pick someone up and drop them off one of your units. That's really cool, one of your squad units. And a lot of the other characters are very neat too. I mentioned the Royal, I keep forgetting the name of it, the Royal Mage, or the Merfolk Royal Mage, I thought has some really cool abilities. And I pretty much like all the different types of units. Again, I just think it's weird that they didn't focus on particular types of units for the Planeswalkers involved. There's a lot of new spells in the game, and that's good because if you play Arena of the Planeswalkers too many times, as I have, then you do start to feel very samey with all the different spells coming up again and again and again. Now you have cards of each of the different colors to flesh out all those decks, and more of that is definitely going to be appreciated as time goes on. But okay, let's talk about what I think is a central focus point, aside from the Planeswalkers, of this expansion set, and that is the Ruiner, the Eldrazi, and his little minions, the Scions. I think this is one of the coolest things. First off, as far as the standard army building and doing in competitive matches, that's one thing. It's a lot of eggs to put in one basket. I think the Ruiner is like 150 points for your army. That's a lot, although it is pretty powerful. Forget all that, though. What I like the most about the Ruiner in this set is the 1 versus all mode that I talked about in the overview. I'm a sucker for 1 versus all modes. I'll admit that. I have a whole geek list I made up of 1 versus all games. That's kind of out of date on Board Game Geek. That's how much I like the whole system. But it works really, really well here, more than I would have thought. And it's a whole other different layer and aspect you can add to the game on top of the other game modes from the original base game. So for just the idea that you can have this incredibly powerful creature, like the power scale blows up when you do the 1 versus all mode with the Ruiner, and he has some really cool abilities. I love the fact that he can resummon the Scions and then devour them for strength, because he's a hero Eldrazi that can do that. And then the fact that I love his ability, or I should say the player who's controlling the Ruiner's ability, that if there are no Planeswalkers adjacent to him, he can lash out and start basically killing any units around him as like punishment for the Planeswalkers not being willing to engage him. It's just a very neat thing, and I found the back and forth between the players and the Eldrazi player. Unfortunately, I was not the Eldrazi player. I wanted to be. I always like being the one in a 1 versus all game, but it wasn't in the cards for me then. But it is a lot of fun. I think that it's pretty evenly balanced too. The Ruiner won in our game of it, but I felt like it could have gone to the all as well. And I thought it was very, very cool. I've played skirmish matches with the new stuff from the set, and I think that the Planeswalkers from the original set match up pretty well against Ob, and Kiora. So overall, Bearing in mind what I said in the beginning, I really wish there was terrain in the box. I wish that they had had a stronger focus on special types of units that pertain to the theme of Zendikar and to the theme of the 2 Planeswalkers in the box. But that's more nitpicky. But even despite those things, I really like this expansion. I think that it's a good way to go as far as the different characters and the spells. I just hope that they really get going with this, that they not only put out more and more and more of these expansion packs with units and spells and planeswalkers, but also terrain. I think that this could have been a really awesome set. As it is, it's just good, and I want more. I think that's what people are going to be saying a lot as months roll on and they slowly trickle these expansions out, but hopefully that trickle turns into a downpour, because it really should be. They could be selling like hotcakes if they had done that, but still, this will tide us over. That is the Battle for Zendikar expansion set for the Magic the Gathering Arena of the Planeswalkers board game. That is quite a mouthful. Thanks for watching. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Patreon. And make sure to check out our sponsor, Board Game Bliss, where you can find an amazing selection of games from around the world. BoardGameBliss.com. Thanks for your support.